The death of curiosity and the idea of doing your own research is really just looking for someone's opinion that agrees with you is not the same thing, right? Like the death of science and vibe coding could theoretically cause people to not agree with like how computers should work.
Welcome to Fork Around and Find Out, the podcast about building, running, and maintaining software and systems. Talos Linux isn't just another Linux distro. It is a purpose-built Linux operating system completely driven by an API that only works with Kubernetes. If you've ever tried to harden an Ubuntu or Red Hat image, you know just how difficult that can be. Not only are you trying to rip things out that you don't need, you're trying to maintain how you rip them out for the future. When I found the Talos Linux project 6 years ago, I was the first person to email Andrew and say, "This is amazing, I want it to exist in the world." This is still an ad read, but I do keep a firewall between this podcast and my day job. I just so happen to really like my day job and the products we build because I'm the head of product. If you run Kubernetes on-prem or at the edge, you need to look at Omni. Omni is a management layer for compute that comes from anywhere and allows you to manage clusters way easier than anything I ever built at Amazon. I'm going to be at KubeCon in London with the Sidero team. We have a booth, N610. If you're in London for the event, check out our website at siderolabs.com. That's S-I-D-E-R-O. Sidero is the Greek word for iron, which means we do Kubernetes bare metal.
I think you just fafoed right there, y'all.
Oh, geez. That's a verb now. Wow. Welcome to Fork Around and Find Out. I am Justin Garrison, and with me is Autumn and Scott Hanselman today. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, friends.
This is turning into the show and tell episode of Scott's office and all the cool things you can do as a Microsoft employee.
Well, no, I would respectfully push back on that. It's not all the things you can do as a Microsoft employee. It's all the things you can do as a person who wants to build crazy stuff in your spare bedroom.
We also started with a little bit of burrito hacks, which was fascinating. All the things you can do at fast food places to max out all of your credits, which is just always fun to learn about.
We who love Chipotle prefer to refer to it as fast casual.
Can we just talk about the fact that Scott has a taco next to his name? Like,
you just saw it? That was...
I would scroll through half of TikTok just to watch Scott talk about his Chipotle that day and be like, we're on the same page. Like, you understand my life.
Scott's holding up his Chipotle VIP card. What is it called? The burrito card?
It's the burrito card. Yeah, it's what they give you if you have way too much Chipotle. It's the American Express black card of Chipotle.
Okay, y'all can't see it though, but Scott's name is on the burrito card.
It's bespoke.
Yeah, they print that for you. Speaking of printing, Scott is also the reason that Autumn and I both have Bamboo Lab printers.
Scott's over here spending everybody's paycheck.
Do not become Scott's friend if you do not
follow him on social media. Money will disappear out of your bank account.
Oh my gosh.
Did you seriously print that?
That was printed. I'm holding up a bronze Mandalorian helmet that was printed in one shot with no sanding on a Bamboo Labs. And then...
How did you print that in one shot?
This is multiple shots. You can see I have a nasty seam right here. That's a Fallout helmet that was printed in two.
Oh my gosh, that's
a Bamboo. That was printed at It's a Mandalorian helmet printed at 97% on a Bamboo Labs P1S in one shot.
That fits on a P1S?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, Scott, I'm gonna have to go buy more filament.
I aspire to be the level of nerds that have like finally made it, and you have enough money for Chipotle and to do nerd stuff. Like Scott, like that's goals. What? Y'all, you can't see it, but Scott just walked over here with a full sword.
That's the Mandalorian.
Might have to be video.
What's it called? The dark saber.
That's a dark saber.
Yeah. You got sound effects and lights.
Is 3D printed using plans from Adafruit, and it runs Circuit Python. And there's
It runs Python?
Yeah. So if I pop this open here at the bottom, there's a Python feather from Adafruit down there, and then there's a button right here, and you probably can't hear it, but it turns on and then it lights up.
I heard some of the sound effects, but I'm sure Descript or whatever we use to make this audio better will remove it
I think
right away.
that they're removing the sound effects from the podcast.
It's background noise. We don't want that.
But I love that this shows that Scott is constantly building projects and figuring out how like things work. Like it's the epitome of being a like all the time engineer. All the things that like you enjoy, you find a way to hack or build or make more of, and I love that.
Well, I appreciate that. I just you got to push back against the chaos.
Or cause some of the chaos, right? Like this. Scott, you've been in tech and software for a minute now. What do you think makes good engineers?
If we put it in the context of AI, one of the things that I've been talking about is that AI is going to make the incurious less curious. If you already don't ask questions, you're in trouble. I think that an engineer should be curious. Like, I don't understand, this is just how I'm wired. I don't understand how you can not want to know how stuff works.
Yeah, that's my problem. It's the rabbit hole. I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's
oh
it.
my
Like,
God, I want to know everything.
like there's this question that people think is a controversial question for interviewing. I love this question, but I can argue both sides if it's a horrible interview question, or I could argue it's the best interview question ever. And the question is, tell me what happens when you go to google.com and you press enter. The simplistic thing is, oh, that's a stupid question. It's trivia, and you want to know about HTTP and DNS, and you want to know how much trivia that they know. But I'm not asking you to tell me what you know. I'm asking you to imagine how it must work. And I want you to go as deep as you can. And one time I interviewed a guy and he says, well, how deep do you want to go? And I said, let's go. Like, how far can you go? And he says, well, let's start with the keyboard. You press enter and the metal contacts of the enter key touch, and then electrons jump between, those contacts. And he started going in, and we spent like 20 minutes and he never got off the keyboard and into the USB.
He's like, is this wireless? Then someone probably just sniffed that out of the air, and now someone knows you pushed enter.
Right. So the point is, how do you think it must work? So you can ask a person who is not technical, who doesn't know DNS and HTTP, and you just say, well, go one level deeper and go one level deeper. And I think that's super interesting because it tells you if they're curious or not. Another example that I like to give a lot is I did this talk at like high school hackathons, and I say, we're going to learn how to code. Okay, kids, yeah, we're going to learn how to code. And I say, my toaster doesn't work. And then we pause, we make it super awkward. And like, well, let's debug this toaster. Incurious people say, buy a new toaster. And curious people are like, does the power work? Is it hot? One little girl said, are the neighbors' lights on?
Well, because if the neighbor's lights aren't on, that means power's out for the whole street. She's smart. That's my favorite part of going to schools is because kids aren't broken yet. Kids think about all the things. They have abstract thinking as just like that's their first level of thinking. Everything is possible, and they're so much fun to talk to.
That is such it's DNS answer for I want toast. The neighbor's lights are off, power's out for the neighborhood, therefore. And then it's also systems thinking. They understand that toast does not exist in a vacuum. It requires society and civilization, and where did the toaster metal come from, and the plastic and all that kind of stuff. So when you order crap on Temu, if you're not thinking about the giant ship spewing oil into the ocean as it goes across the Chinese Sea, so you got a $1 piece of crap from Temu, then you're not thinking about the system that the thing works in. So good engineers, to answer your questions, are curious and they think about that stuff.
Which goes back to his shirt right now that says, be curious, not judgmental.
Two things. Have you read the book, The Toaster Project?
Uh-huh. Yeah, when the guy tries to build a toaster from original parts and he has to go and smelt his own iron. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Second thing, I read a book about Leonardo da Vinci, which I didn't know this beforehand, he was commonly considered the most curious person in history.
That's an interesting, I don't know if that can be measured, but I wouldn't hate that.
Right. And it was fascinating hearing all of the things, because the thing I found most fascinating was he was not curious in a way that was trying to get him any sort of notoriety or sharing it. Like everything that we found out that he learned, we found out after the fact. Right? It was like all private journals that he wasn't published. He published one book in his entire life that wasn't even like completely written by him. He wasn't like sharing this with the world. He just wrote everything down because he wanted to learn it for himself. And he was so curious about so many different areas that he would just spend years. Oh, let me just dissect an eyeball. Literally would dissect an eyeball over and over again for like a year to figure out the best way to do it. What's inside of it?
You know who that reminds me of too? George Washington Carver. I think he made 40 different ways to use a peanut, and he used the different oils, peanut butter, but he used it for like medicinal things. He used it for like, I think he ended up using the oil to light, like, like to burn a fire. Like there is just amazing. Like who would sit there with a peanut and say, I want to use this 40 different ways? You know what I mean? Like he had so many patents, and it's just like, I think that's going to set people apart in the future, being genuinely curious. Like, I think for a long time, people want it to be in tech because it made a bunch of money. And we're going to get back to like the people who just want to sit there and know how everything works in obsessive detail.
Do companies still allow that in tech?
No.
And that's one of my concerns. Yeah, because like now companies are making all the money and they say you have to move faster. You can't spend a year on a peanut. Is that going to be a concern for us going forward? I feel like AI
It's already a concern. The 10x engineer and just break things and build things fast and as profitable as possible, but we've lost all curiosity, all time to invent cool things.
maybe our curiosity also just gets shallower, right? Like a lot of people just like know a little bit about a lot of things, but
I
rarely
don't know. All
deep.
the people that we talk to on this podcast, everybody's got dips and depths of curiosity. I think we're not allowing it to be showcased anymore.
I think that if I, as an older person born of a certain generation with the privileges that I have had, say to someone that you should learn C, that can land wrong, right?
Why? Why would that land wrong?
Because it sounds like old dude who already did it is telling young person do it the way I did. Now, I grew up with a dad who said you got to drive stick shift. And other people are like, "Hey, I just can use Uber, man." The problem is when you're using Uber, or God help me, Uber Eats, and I say, "Well, before you're allowed to use Uber Eats, you need to make a garden in our backyard so that you appreciate what food looks like," right? Like, "Hey, this drone will deliver tacos and then a man will come over and move my jaw for me because it's too hard to chew."
But
That
that's valid though, because I think AI is gonna make people dumber. Now dumber, because like we're like, but like because you don't have to go and do the work, right? And sometimes it's not the fact that you need the answer; it's going through the struggle of finding the answer and the things you learn along the way.
Yeah. There's I'm going to pull this up on my screen over here. This was a horrible thing I saw today. Let me bring this up. I called it a tragedy in three acts. There's I'm not on Twitter right now, but there's a gentleman on Twitter who says, he says, March 15th, this is a tweet. My SaaS, my software as a service business, was built with Cursor, zero handwritten code. AI is no longer just an assistant, it's also the builder. Stop whining and start building. That's March 15th. March 17th. Guys, I'm under attack. Ever since I started to build my SaaS using Cursor, I'm maxed out on API keys. People are bypassing the subscription and creating random crap in the DB. I'm not technical, so this is taking me longer than usual to figure out. Okay? Now, March 19th. Guys, I'm shutting down my app. You were right. I shouldn't have deployed unsecured code to production. Cursor just breaking parts of the code. I'm going to rebuild it with Bubble.
What is Bubble?
Bubble is a no-code platform for people who can't code. But the point is that I vibe coding, I get it. Like I vibe coded a 3D fractal thing that runs in the background that looks pretty. And we took about 15 minutes rather than learning how to write a shader in Unity because it's fine. It was not going anywhere. And it was fun. But I don't think you vibe code like the Social Security database, right? That's why the Doge boys are so dumb, is just that like you can't vibe code your way out of government. And cleaning up after brownfield enterprise applications is not built on vibes. It's built on knowledge. So I don't want to gatekeep vibe coding, but I at the same time need people to understand that somebody's got to know how to change oil, change tires, rebuild an engine. And there's not a lot of software engineers on The Walking Dead. Like we don't really make it into season 2 or 3 of The Walking Dead. It's mostly people who know how to chop wood and like make food. So I want to encourage people to go deeper.
Do you think that we are going to learn from this though? Like, or do you think do you think that we finally dispel the 10x engineer and vibe coding at the end of this Dodge fiasco? Like, does security become important? Do we all of a sudden realize that we are missing curiosity and like that we cannot do engineering in this way? Does this dispel the tech bro toxicity, or does this no? Like, we're just gonna end up in the same thing.
Well, that gets into a big, longer conversation. But you're right. The death of curiosity and the idea of doing your own research is really just looking for someone's opinion that agrees with you is not the same thing, right? Like the death of science and vibe coding could theoretically cause people to not agree with like how computers should work. And vibe coding will eventually turn into really, really good prompting, which will turn into quality code being generated. But that doesn't change the fact that all of the existing code that already exists in the world has not been coded by AIs.
But think about the fact that we've always looked, like everybody's always looked at somebody's example on Stack Overflow, right? But this is to the point where like you have to dig deeper. Like at Stack Overflow, you're like, this could work or this couldn't work. So we're going to look at 4 different examples, figure out why these examples do this, and dive deeper. But this is where we're going to start. Like, do you think it becomes a starting point? Or like, but it's not even just the vibe coding. Like the way that Dodge is doing it in such a do it fast, do it. It doesn't matter if you know it, but like it's just not the vibe coding. It's the vibe of just hoping it all works out.
It's the fork around stage.
Yes.
Right? Like that
So
everyone just wants to be in the fork around stage.
Yeah, and I know I overuse analogies and stuff like that, but like you can keep driving all you want, but like when you eventually run out of oil and your car seizes up, you're gonna find out.
Do you think we learn from this find out? Is this the time that we're finally going to learn? You know what I mean?
As the parent of a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old who are finding out, whether it be like, yeah, I can do an all-nighter and do that homework, and finding out that that's maybe not the move. I think that finding out matters and it is a healthy part of life. I just don't think you should find out on important stuff. I always talk about natural consequences when I talk to my sons, like this. And if you make a mistake and something bad happens, hopefully it's not a mistake that costs you a foot or a toe, but you do need to screw up. You need to run out of gas and pull to the side of the road and call AAA. That's not a life-changing thing. So I want natural consequences to happen to people so that they can learn and grow, but I don't want natural consequences to happen to people where they hurt themselves or others.
That's where I'm at with my kids. I'm getting into that preteen stage, and I'm like, what things can I let you find out on your own? And that will teach you to be a better human and plan in the future. And what things do I need to stop you from doing? You know what I mean? And I like, is the government something you can let natural consequences happen to? Like, are we going to survive? Like,
how does that apply to like other areas of life, right? When I think of things that I've learned my lesson about was I broke my arm when I was 15 years old, and it doesn't work well today.
is this the mosh pit thing? Like,
yes.
Is this the mosh pit?
Yeah.
That is that picture just every time.
My 19-year-old put his arms up in a limo, and the wind caught one of his arms and it flipped his arm backwards and popped it out of joint. And he had shoulder surgery to fix it, and it's never going to be the same.
Yeah. So there's those sorts of things that are just kind of like, it wasn't really a decision necessarily. It was a thing that happened, and I found out in a way that I didn't want to. But I also feel like there are a lot of those areas that it's fine, right? Like I've crashed my bike plenty of times. I've written bad front end code plenty of times, and like none of that was super critical. But the areas that, yeah, you're right, there are levels of importance, and the repercussions are a lot more serious. How do we keep that, like, back to the curiosity piece, like that often comes from learning a lot of different things, right? Like Scott, you have 3D printing, you have video games, you got fast food, stuff like whatever. Like you have so many different areas that you have been curious and explored and gone deep in. Some of them we want to keep letting people go wide to find where they're curious and see how those interests overlap, right? And like those, like the things you learned probably on your arcade cabinets apply to some of your 3D printing and apply to some of your coding.
You know when you're driving down the freeway and you see one of those billboards that say your ad here? This is basically the audio version of that billboard. This is Justin Still. We are still looking for sponsors for this podcast. We are having a great time learning with everyone in the community about how infrastructure works, how people are adapting to problems, and even looking for solutions that solve some of those problems. We don't do pay-to-play episodes, but we do love to promote people in the ad spots so other people can learn about what you're doing. If you are a sponsor and you're looking to reach this audience of developers and engineers, go to fafo.fm/sponsor and check out our packages.
Yeah, well, so the example I give is that I'm the first one in my family to really go to college and be like a programmer type. But I'm realizing as I get older that my dad and I are the same guy. And all this 3D printing and video games and retro gaming and Raspberry Pis, it's the same thing, except he's in his shop with a lathe and making wood stuff and making toys for kids. And he's doing the exact same stuff, except his computers are woodworking tools and the Yankee workshop. But the same, like pushing back against the chaos by just making stuff and trying to put good things, take molecules and put them into an oriented, positive way and then put them into the universe is that we're the same guy. You know what I mean? Making stuff for joy's sake. You don't have to, like, you can have hobbies. Like, this is another thing we need to tell the young people and the post-COVID people is like, it's okay to not monetize stuff. Like, just have a hobby. Like, there's this buddy of mine on TikTok named Rodney Norman. I know, Autumn, you've probably seen him. He's a crazy-eyed, long beard, ZZ Top looking dude, and he pops on your For You page. And he goes, hey, how's it going? You guys, you can just do stuff.
I gave up TikTok, but I honestly miss it, not because of what TikTok is supposed to be, but the fact that people share the random joy of their life, like you're saying. But you know what's interesting? It sounds like you and your dad both make art, but you're making it with different mediums almost. You know what I mean? Like you're making something, but they're just different mediums in which, and it sounds like it's also funny that like you approach all these things in the same process of curiosity and wanting to make things like code, 3D printing, all of these things. And so your process is the same. It's just for different outcomes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't even know the result is different, but the result is joy and happiness and making people happy. Whether if I make a toy and print out a little man and give it to somebody with the 3D printer and my dad makes it out of wood, the point is we made something. I really try to find a balance between consumption and creation. I do realize that like things suck right now and everyone's working really hard and it's okay to sit down and doom scroll, but I think we should doom scroll with intention. Like, I don't want you to think that, oh, Hanselman's got more serotonin than I do, and he somehow can like work a 9 to 5 and then work a 5 to 9. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if you find yourself doom scrolling for more than 3 or 4 hours, maybe take a beat and go, did I do this on purpose or did this happen?
You got to balance it out too, right? Like we can't endure and still show up and kind of be a part of good things and the change and like see it through if we don't endure and get through what we're doing now. And I think sometimes you need the rest. Like you don't always have to earn the rest. You have to rest and have the hobbies and find the joy because it's the only way that we make it to create that good in the end, you know? Like it's just not sustainable.
Is there a balance there? I'm thinking of my own like consumption habits, and yeah, during COVID time, like I did way too much TikTok consumption. It comes in waves for me of being able to create things. And I'm like, oh, I get inspired to create some stuff, so I'm just going to create a bunch of stuff at once, and then maybe go back to kind of a consumption mode, read some books, things like that. But in there, I often find that I miss the like maintenance side of things, where I'm like, I just have to maintain something sometimes. And last night I'm trying to put in some new faucets in my bathroom, and literally like went to Home Depot, bought this, new valve. They're all different sizes for everything. So like bought new valves, stuff like that. Started taking off, shut off the water for the house, took it apart. I'm like, oh, everything I bought is wrong. And then realized that like, I either have to go back to Home Depot right now. It's like 9:00. I'm like, they're still open. I could go. It's like, or I could just call the plumber, have them come do it the next day, which is actually, they're coming in an hour.
So you gave up? Like you just said, this is no longer worth my time?
I threw in the towel, right? Like I wasn't doing it to save money. I was doing it because I thought it'd be an easy job to do. And I was trying to save time because I was like, I didn't want to coordinate with someone else, be home, have them do this stuff. And then I realized that like, I didn't have the skill set to do it. And I didn't have the tools necessary to do it. And so my water at my house has been shut off for almost 24 hours now because one of the pipes was leaking and I couldn't get it sealed again. And I didn't go back to the store. I didn't have time. So now it's just like, okay, I've found out that I could not do that maintenance, but it seems like that's often missed in this. We can consume things, we can make things for joy, which is often great, but then sometimes we have to patch some drywall.
Yeah, I think that's valid. I resonate with that a lot. Like I've replaced all the toilets myself and I've done a bunch of plumbing, but at some point, like my son, my 17-year-old bought a thing because it gets cold here and his car needs to be warmed up. So he has to wake up early, go out, warm the car up, go back in the house, make breakfast, and then his car can be driven. So he got a remote starter. And I was like, oh yeah, we'll bang that out in a weekend. You and I will be bonding thing and we'll take the car apart. We'll put the remote starter thing in your 2001 Honda and everything is going to be great. And we popped the thing open and started pulling panels off the car. And we were like, Dad does not know how to do this. And we had YouTube and we sat there for 6 hours and I buttoned the whole car up and I says, we got to get somebody to help me because I can't. And I felt bad as a dad. I felt bad as a dude. I felt bad as a person. Like, I don't think I have the ability to take this car apart.
But that's a skill in itself, though. Knowing when to quit is a skill. Because, like, you know what I mean? Sometimes you can keep going and completely mess something up so much
How
worse.
many Git branches do you have that you're just like, you know what, not doing this anymore, right? Like, we're starting over with this repo.
Like, Git commits, all my Git commits are like, maybe this will work. Trying again.
Jenkins this time.
And then you're like, how do I squash commits?
Yeah. No one should see this.
Yes.
I tried to hide the like my Git pages like history because I tried to like fix something so many times and then it unpublished my whole website
Oh,
and I
it's
was so
bad.
mad.
I've got a bunch of comments in my code where it's just like, I don't know how many times I've written, may God have mercy on my soul in a comment in actual production code.
That's so real though. Like in that moment. Actually, you know what's another thing that's interesting about consumption now that people are doing so many like, you know, like not buying things at certain places or whatever. It's like makes you think about what you actually buy, and the fact that you can make cool things with 3D printers or just making things is like so much fun.
You know, every time I go on TikTok, and again, I know you're not on TikTok anymore, but like, but my TikTok is a joy. I have curated my FYP, and it's lovely. But whenever I go there and I share my joy of 3D printing, they're like, more plastic crap for the oceans, and it's like, I can use all the like just plant-based, disposable, biodegradable plastic that I want to use, but it's like surely making like I made a tablet holder, you know, with like it's got like a you can like adjust it. It's a whole thing, right? Like this is the kind of crap that we're shipping from China, and we're cool with that. We're flying it here with petrol, but then I make it in my house, and I'm the one that should, you know, like, can we just celebrate the fact that this was beamed here with electrons? Like it's a freaking Star Trek replicator. I spawned this from like Minecraft. I went to it. I said tea Earl Grey hot, and this thing popped out of a microwave oven.
Okay,
And I don't
low-key,
get
I'm more
celebrated for
excited
that.
about that movie than my kids are. Like, just like
Which movie?
the Minecraft movie.
No, that's garbage. That's an absolute nightmare. There's that Jack Black. I love him, but he's going to ruin that movie.
Okay,
He cannot
he
be the
is
voice of
definitely
everyone.
going to ruin it. But the fact that I get to see like a little square bee, like
I don't know. I'm very concerned about that
Jack
movie.
Black and Jason Momoa, like this was not your like. Why
No.
are you here?
I just feel like the Mario movie barely was okay with Chris Pratt, my least favorite Hollywood Chris.
Why do they keep trying to like put like a whole grown adults and kids? Like why? Like Minecraft is very specifically about two children.
I know. I know. I don't understand how Jack Black is supposed to play Bowser and Steve. Like it's between him and Chris. They have all the lockdown on all the
And
voices.
then it ruined Jurassic Park and believing in things for my children because my kid was like, "Isn't that Owen?" And I was like, "Okay, this is like telling you that Santa's not real."
One of my favorite things about having a bad memory and being terrible at faces is I will watch so many movies and have no idea who the people are.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And my wife is like, how do you not know it's that person? I'm like, I have no clue who you're talking about.
Oh, I have that classic. I don't know. I don't think I'm neuro spicy or neuro anything, but like I will pause the movie and I'll go, I saw that person in 1987 in the background scene of Godfather 2. You know what I mean? Most of our TV watching is IMDb searching for stuff. Another thing that I like doing, this is totally random, but I think you're the right audience for this. I've never said this before, but I really like giving attaboys and attagirls to secondary characters and character actors in shows. So if you see a show and you see like the friend, like it could be a Hallmark movie, there's like the whatever, and then there's their friend. And the friend is not a name, they're just a working actor. Or you see a show and they're like fifth or sixth on the call sheet, and they did a great job. I go and find them on social media and I say, I loved you in whatever. I thought you did a really great job and wish you all the best in your continued success. Like, keep killing it. You're doing a great job on whatever, Power, or, you know, I saw you in this thing. And then inevitably 5 years later, that person will come up and they'll get their big break and they'll be on a thing. But they followed me before because they had 4,000 followers and now they're somebody. And I've like built relationships with actors by finding them during their come up where it's like, that one is going to be amazing. And when you get your thing, like you keep freaking grinding. So a couple of times a month, I will shout out a random character actor because I just think that for every Brad Pitt, there's 10,000 that were background actors who will then be Brad Pitt in 10 years. And it's so fun to watch people like that just keep grinding and doing awesome stuff. So
I like to do that with people that are trying to get into tech, which is like, I guess not the same, but it's just like, dude, that grind is so hard. And right now it is especially hard. Can you imagine trying to get your first job in this market? And like, I'll see people and they'll be like working on a project or studying for an interview. And I'm like, keep going. You got this. Cause
I
like,
love it. And I get the little fire thing when you go on TikTok and you're the first comment. So I always like, keep doing it. First comment. Or I go on their lives when they're doing streams with like 3 people.
people need some good and happy in this world. That's one thing I really like about you. Like, even your stories, you got a Chipotle card and then you started buying random like free Chipotle. Like, it takes so little to do nice things in the world, and there's not enough people doing like being the good that people want to see. People are doing a lot of complaining and not a lot of doing the very easy small things to try to, like, you could just say something nice to somebody. Don't be a douche. Like, you know what I mean?
And it doesn't even have to be like public, right? Like, I mean, you can do, like, you could say that was a great project in private or whatever. Like the TikTok lives, I would go into so many people and just like start tapping the screen to give the hearts, right? I'm just like, whatever.
You don't want to quote. This is not a quote tweet opportunity. This is a private conversation opportunity. But that's where people overthink stuff. Like the challenge is, though, what is preventing people from being just pleasant?
Yeah, dude, we lost empathy during COVID. Like, it's empathy is a huge, like, empathy is so important to how we interact with each other. If somebody would just think about, like, how that person could be having a good day or a bad day or just empathizing with the situation, we would be, like, we could fix so many problems. It would be so much of a better world with just a small change like that.
How do you find that, though? Because I was on this show a couple of days ago. You should have her on this show. Her name is Sharon Steed. She is a empathy consultant, and she has a really severe stutter. And the way that she worked on her stutter was to become an international keynote speaker, which I think is such a flex to, like, I have a stutter, I'm going to go and be a keynote speaker, and that's going to, like, make things better. And she's great. And she was talking, her show is about empathy and how do we find that. But my question to you is, how do you, is it rude to expect empathy from people who are really struggling? Like, I expect empathy the higher up we get, the higher up in government, the higher up in life, the more money you have, the more your bills are on auto pay, I expect more empathy from you. I think it's not good for us to expect empathy from people who are trying to pay the rent.
Do you ever heard the saying of having enough spoons?
Yeah, the spoon.
Those
Yeah, you
people
got to have
have
spoons.
those people have more spoons for empathy, right? But
They
I think
should.
yeah, they should. I think, like, I'm a single mom, I have things going on, but I am so much better off than other people that could be in my situation, right? So if I see a mom that needs help, or if I see moms working on stuff for tech, or if I see other women struggling, like, we all have stuff going on. But if you have been blessed in some sort of way, I feel like it is on you to pay that back and be like, I remember I got this job and Kelsey Hightower out of nowhere, didn't even know he knew I existed, was like, been watching you. I'm so like glad that like everything worked out for you. Dude, that makes your day when someone is nice and kind to you. Like, the little things, just encouraging other people. Like, a lot of it doesn't take a lot of extra work.
Yeah, Kelsey lives in the same town as I do, and he and I talk, and that's a classic Kelsey move.
But that's so impactful to other people,
100%.
though. You know what I mean?
Real G's move in silence like lasagna.
I'm putting that on a shirt, and it's gonna be like Scott Hanselman.
That's not.
Sounds like a Garfield quote, but not. And that, like, I do think that goes, what you're saying there, like auto pay, like the moment I knew that I had made it was when I had my bills on auto pay, right? Because the amount of people that don't have that, especially, and the amount of people that go from not having that to having that is actually a pretty small portion, right? Some people just have always had auto pay bills and they don't know what it's like to have to actually count and pay on a certain date.
That is wild to me. My kids will like ask for stuff and I'll be like, you have fresh fruit and dental coverage. Sit down, middle class children. Like,
yeah. I mean, like, it's challenging too, because you want to, like, everyone wants street cred and everyone wants to be taken seriously. And, like, I get that my bills are on auto pay now, but I still will say to my kids, like, you have McDonald's money? Like, that kind of conversation needs to happen, because if you forget where you came from and not only your bills are on auto pay, but someone mows your lawn and, you don't even know how much milk costs, then you completely lose touch.
I think that's a huge part of the empathy, is that people forgot where they came from. Like,
one of the things I tried for myself
I'm thinking
was
about J-Lo at the bodega right now. Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to live in the side quest in Scott's brain because they're lit.
Well, you were like people need to forget where they came from, and I just imagine like J-Lo going bacon, egg, and cheese and an orange drink. If you know, you know. I'm like, no, Jenny, no.
You know what? Like, I just, like, the memes that could come from your brain are gold.
My brain is primarily ran on animated GIFs of Neil Patrick Harris. It's seriously though, I had an absolute banger of a GIF recently. I was in, like, my day is just meetings, right? I just have like Tetris shaped, L-shaped meetings coming in, clicking into Outlook, and I just like my body hurts. I'm sitting here, I'm doing meetings all the time. So the only thing I live for anymore is to just nail a GIF perfectly in a meeting and then get a bunch of thumbs up. I had an absolute banger of a GIF recently in a big all hands, and I was like on a high for like an hour. And then one of my VPs texted me, not helpful.
I've had that message.
Okay, but can we just talk though? Like the worst is when you have like the best joke or like reply, and then it's like not the right audience and nobody gets it, or they're like not appreciative, or like 5 people get it and you're like, this is great. Like,
I don't know how old y'all are, but like it's time for me to retire some of my Office Space gifts because people have never seen that movie. No one has any idea my references anymore. Like I said, recently I was in a meeting and I said,
I've never seen that movie.
exactly, that's my point, right? Like I was in a meeting recently, I said, cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria, and it was crickets. And Justin knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Jeez.
And Autumn, I'm assuming you have no idea what that is about.
This is what's wrong with vibe coding.
This is what's wrong with America. All my Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross gifts have been all retired. I get coffees for closers, Autumn. No idea what that means.
You know what? He sent me a shirt that said that, and I was so confused.
I did. I literally mailed her a shirt that said coffees for closers, and she's like, I don't know what this is.
I wore it to scale, and I was like, I like coffee. I know I hurt Justin's soul all the time.
That's so bad.
The only time I remember our age gap is when he takes naps and then his dad jokes in like random movie like sentences.
I'm just happy to hear that I'm not the only one that gets messages from my VP saying not the right time. That has been a constant in my career.
Absolutely. It was such a banger of a GIF. It was just so good.
Before we wrap up, what do you think that you've learned that, like, besides vibe coding, besides staying curious somewhere, and like you've had a very successful career from the outside, it seems like you've had a very successful.
Saying, like, what's a career even? Like, it's a compliment that capitalism gives you for moving the stock price. I don't know. What is a successful career?
Bills on auto pay, probably for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, winning capitalism is a thing, but like, I would argue that it's about I get a couple of emails a week from people who are like, oh, I read your book in high school and now I'm a dev, or I met you in Pakistan and now I have a little company, or like those are the things. Like I look up to my aunt who was a Portland public school teacher for 40 years, and she will bump into someone at like Whole Foods and like, oh my God, Mrs. Hanselman, oh, you were my favorite English teacher and now I'm da-da-da. That's the point. That's a successful career for me. The bills on auto pay is a gravy.
Do you think having the bills on auto pay allows you to be more with the spoons, to be
100%. It gives me 2 more spoons than anybody else. That's why the point is of all this work that I'm doing, and hopefully the work that you all are doing, is to give people more spoons. And if people don't understand what that means, go and Google for spoon theory and read the Wikipedia page. You wake up in the morning with a certain number of spoons, and the number of spoons that you have is based on how much you got to go and dig yourself through the crap that life is going to throw at you that day. And by the end of the day, do you have any spoons left? If you don't have any spoons left, you might snap at your kids. You might not have energy for food. You might have only energy to just collapse and watch Netflix. And then you wake up the next day and you try to replenish your spoons. And mental health and your background and all the things in your life can add and take away spoons.
I heard something. It was a lady, and she said that when her and her husband get home, they do this check-in with like how many spoons and how many percentage you have. And I thought that was
at my house.
Such a rad way to communicate, because how true is that in life? Like very rare can you be 50-50 on things, but like if you're having a bad day or just anything, like being able to communicate that, because it has such to do with like how you react to things and how you show up in places. I just think that's so rad to be like, I don't have a lot of spoons today. It's nothing that you did. It's just because I just think that's such a rad and emotionally intelligent way to communicate.
That is exactly what my wife and I have been married 25 years this year.
I think that's so cute. I think y'all are so cute.
We 100%. Thank you very much. We do that. I'm at about a 30 right now. I'm 30%. Like the progress bar, I'm at 30%. I'm not at 100%. So like,
is this a Windows progress bar or like a legit one?
Like, no, like you just imagine like it's the Windows file copy one, right? No, but it's just like, I've got enough spoons to make dinner. You chill, because we use this phrase a lot. Unspoken expectations breed resentment.
They do. And consideration is one of the biggest ways to show that you care about somebody else, is the consideration and the like that level of communicating. And I think if people even did that in other relationships, it doesn't even have to just be who you're married to, but just like having consideration, like that's a part of being an engineer and working with people that nobody talks about. Being how you can interact with other people and make their lives better and work as a team is like so important in how we show up to other people in the world. Like giving back spoons to people is like, you know what I mean? It's so important how we show up with other
It's
people.
fine. We'll change the name of the podcast. It's Spoon Around and Find Out. It's fine. We can... Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to us. Where should people find you online?
They can just start at hanselman.com. If you like podcasts, and if you're listening to this one, I hope that you do, I would encourage you to check out my 2 podcasts I've got going right now. One is Hansel Minutes, which is coming up on episode 1000 every Thursday for the last 20 years. And I have a new fresh podcast. It's a video podcast I would encourage you to check out. It's called Mark and Scott Learn Too. And every week, the CTO of Microsoft Azure and technical fellow Mark Rasinovich and I learn to do new things. This last week, we learned to do technical reputation. How do you build your technical reputation? You can find that on my YouTube.
Ooh, I'm gonna go check that out. I love that you're still learning new things. Like, because it seems that's, dude, I might go back to TikTok just for Scott Hanselman, just because you're always like, this week, like, look, you got me and Justin to buy 3D printers. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I feel like people are like, are you ever going to retire? And I'm like, I hope not. Like, I hope I'm building, like, I'm maybe not working in the same, you know how Kelsey talks about how he doesn't.
He didn't retire. He likes to say he retired. He's just building stuff without a boss.
Yes,
he has
and
no boss.
yes, and having that freedom. Like, I want to build things and do and learn things for forever, but just in a way that I can take back my own time and freedom.
Yep. I have a date, January 22nd, 2029.
We'll miss you, though. We'll miss you.
I'll see you. I'll be out there.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you again, Scott, and stay curious, everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode of Fork Around and Find Out. If you like this show, please consider sharing it with a friend, a coworker, a family member, or even an enemy. However we get the word out about this show helps it to become sustainable for the long term. If you want to sponsor this show, please go to fafo.fm/sponsor and reach out to us there about what you're interested in sponsoring and how we can help. We hope your systems stay available and your pagers stay quiet. We'll see you again next time.